Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Soyan Perez, and I'm going to present UnMix-NeRF, Spectral Unmixing its neural Radiance Fields. This work is done by the Universidad Industrial de Santander and KAUS University, with myself, Sara Rojas, Carlos Hinojosa, Hugo Roa Chacon, and Bernard Gunner. So, first of all, NeRF represents a scene as a continuous field and rendered novel view by volumetric integration along camera arrays. It enables high-fidelity novel view synthesis and reliable geometry estimation from multi-view images. The thing is that classic NeRF is RGB only. It reconstructs appearance and geometry from images, but it doesn't extend to other sensing modalities. As a result, it doesn't identify which materials are present in the scene. And segmentation typically requires modifying the pipeline or attaching an external pretrained model like Dino, segment anything, etc. For example, one of the limitations is due to metamerism. Since we only observe 3 channels, so RGB channels, 2 different materials can match in color under one light. When the illumination changes, the match breaks and the difference becomes visible. So in this slide, it's the example. In the first column, it's with one light and they match. And then when we change the light, the difference becomes visible. And why material understanding matters? So look at the scene at the right. A robot, for example, must choose between a plastic cup and a ceramic mug for the microwave. If it cannot tell which material is present, the action becomes unsafe. So RGB gives you color and shape, but not what things are made of. So here's where spectral imaging becomes very important, because spectral imaging samples many wavelengths from the electromagnetic spectrum, forming a cube of data, where each pixel has a spectral signature, and that's far more discriminative than RGB. This helps to apart materials that looks the same in color. So, because each material has a representative spectral signature. This spectra unlocks tasks like material segmentation and classification. Usually, they can separate materials that are visually similar in RGB domain, but physically different, and you can note that differences in the spectral domain. So in real scenes, a pixel captured in the hyperspectral scene may contain multiple materials. So spectral unmixing is the process of breaking down these mixed signals into 2 components, the abundance component and the endmembers component. So you can think like abundances like the fraction of materials contribution in the pixel, like the percentage, and the members are the pure spectral signature of the material, like the representative low rank representation of the spectral signature. So more specifically, each pixel is a linear combination of the members and the abundance, where the member matrix must be between 0 and 1. This is to be physically visible. And the abundance vector must be greater than 0 and sum to 1, because this represents the percentage of abundance for each material in that pixel. And there is also the box constraint to be all of the pixels in the reflectance domain, that is between 0 and 1. So recent works has extended NeRF to the spectral modality, improving the 3D spectral reconstruction in NeRF domain. These are HS-NeRF work, Spectral NeRF, and HyperGS. But these methods treat spectral bands as independent channels, failing to take advantage of the rich material information encoded within the spectral signature of each pixel. And none of these methods allow for segmentation of each pixel in the scene. So we are the first work to include spectral mixing modeling within the NeRF framework. This allows us to improve spatial and spectral rendering, perform unsupervised material segmentation by using the learned abundance vectors, and also we can perform scene editing using the learned endmember dictionary. So this is the complete unmixed framework. As in NeRF, we feed a 3D position and a view direction to the neural network. And for each sample along a camera array, the network predicts a density and a spectral reflectance. We then, as a standard, integrate along the array with volume rendering to obtain the spectral readings. We divide into diffuse and specular reflectance component in our framework. So what's diffuse and specular components? So here is an illustration about diffuse and specular reflections. The thing is that diffuse component is view independent and the specular component is view dependent. So we leverage this in our framework to learn these two components. And also we use the intuition behind the standard linear mixing model in our framework. So we have a scaling factor along the members and the abundance maps. And this scaling factor allows more to learn more spectral variations to be captured, like the high frequency variations in the spectral signature. Okay, so let's focus on the view-independent diffuse field. At each 3D point, we produce a density, this is typically from NeRF, and then we also predict the material abundances and a scaling factor that absorbs illumination and the environmental variability. We apply a softmax to the abundances, so they are non-negative and sum to 1 to be physically feasible. And also we apply a sigmoid to the scaling S to keep it bounded. The global dictionary E stores the member spectra 1 per column. So it's important to know that this global dictionary is the same for all the scene and it's shared for all the arrays. So then with this, the diffuse spectrum is then calculated with the diffuse reflectance component formula. Now let's focus on the view-dependent specular field. So the previous one was view-independent. The materials in a scene doesn't depend where you are viewing. So the view-dependent component is separated from the materials. So from the position and the viewing direction, we obtain a specular reflectance. A tint factor modulates this term to control the highlight color across wavelengths while keeping it separate from the diffuse material. We add it to the diffuse spectrum and then integrate with the density using the standard volume rendering to produce the final spectral radiance. We, in our framework, train only with two loss functions. First, we render the hyperspectral radiance along each ray, and we match it to the measured spectrum with the standard mean square error loss. Second, we project that spectrum to RGB using the camera response, and we match it to the RGB image. So we supervise the signal only with the radiance. We don't add loss for segmentation or for the abundances or for the scaling or for the numbers. It's just based on the radiance. Now we use the mixing components for unsupervised material segmentation. Given the learned endmember dictionary E and a rendered spectrum C of R, we compute a normalized similarity between the spectral signature and each learned endmember. Next, we apply a softmax to those normalized similarities. And finally, we pick the material with the highest probability for each ray. And that will be the material for that ray. The good news is that with this approach, we don't need manual labels or the ground truth of the segmentation for the training. segmentation here emerged naturally from the learned spectral structure. Next are the datasets we used to train and test on UnMix-NeRF. The first one is NESPOF. This is a synthetic dataset. The second one is surface optics, and the third one is BaySpec. Surface and BaySpec are real images captured with real hyperspectral cameras. Also, to enable quantitative evaluation of material segmentation, we extended the synthetic NESPOF dataset with rendered ground truth material labels for all the synthetic scene. On the NESPOF test scenes, UnMix-NeRF delivers state-of-the-art novel view quality, so we achieve higher PCNR and equal or lower root mean square error than previous methods, while training in minutes greater than hours. On the real surface optics dataset, UnMix-NeRF ranks first on both Rosemary and Basil, outperforming HyperGS and achieving the lowest spectral angle map and root mean square error, showing more faithful spectra variation across materials and not just sharper RGB. Similar trends are observed in the pinecone and anacampera scenes, where our approach provides both higher reconstruction fidelity and better spectral consistency in the metrics. Now we show for the caladium scene, frame 51, the top row is a single spectral band for each method, and next it's the ground truth. At the bottom row, we visualize the mean relative absolute error, so lower is better, and darker blue means less error. So our reconstruction is the cleanest, where fewer artifacts and better preservation of fine-grained structure is visible. Here, we show some component of UnMix-NeRF rendered. Across the top, you see the spectral reflectance at several wavelengths. Notice how the relative response changes as the wavelength shifts. And on the bottom left is the specular reflectance. Note the changes depending on the viewing angle. And on the bottom right are the linear material abundances. Each map activated on a different region of the scene depending on the material. Here on the left is a rendered RGB view. In the middle, you see our unsupervised material segmentation obtained directly from the learned endmembers, and the probability is recomputed. So here, no labels were used. And on the right, we do a material level edit. So what we did is we change the members in the scene, and the edit propagates currently across all the scene. This is the HR scene. So the top row visualizes the linear material abundances. The bottom left is the rendered RGB. And in the middle, you see the unsupervised material segmentation derived one more time from the endmember probabilities. And on the right, there is a principal components projection of the predictor scene that acts as a sanity check and clusters the same regions that we see in the supervised material segmentation. So let me leave you with three takeaways. So UnMix-NeRF is the first 3D method to integrate spectral unmixing, jointly learning endmembers and abundances from material-aware novel view synthesis. The second one is spectral segmentation emerged from endmembers estimation, material separate via an unsupervised cluster probe with no labels. And the third one is the endmember level editing enables intuitive scene control, letting you swap retained materials consistently across all the novel views. That's all. Thank you so much. You can scan the QR, go to the source code, our webpage, and our paper. Thank Thank you so much.